you guys heard back there, she's on the development team, and when this program started up, and even before we interviewed you all, we were trying to think about like, who do we want involved in this, who do we want on our team, and you'll learn about Rope Team as one of our elements, which is who's your community of people supporting you. And so Cindy recommended to call Matthew Shapiro, and I mean Shapiro, sorry.
It's okay.
And when she said just call Matthew, I was like, okay, that's great. I love meeting new people, but over the phone, like I didn't know what to expect. I mean, she said he's awesome and he's been to the summit.
I've got everybody fooled really well.
You do have everyone
really well.
And so, but my phone call with him, he, you know how Kathy mentioned the attitude is caught, not taught. After my phone call with Matthew, first time ever talking to him and meeting him, I just left feeling like, I felt like he was offering a lot that I could never have expected over a phone call. I want to say inspired, but it's not just that.
Good catch.
Yeah. I felt like we both had like heightened our lives just over one phone call. And I do think Matthew has that attitude that is totally catchable, and it's awesome. So we're happy to have him here. I'll let him speak for himself a little bit more, but he is a consultant and public speaker. He started his own company called Six Wheels Consulting, and he lives out in Virginia. So he's very involved in the community. He does a lot of things, and on his website, I mean, I can't keep track of all the amazing things he's involved in. But he works with numerous disability and youth-related boards, organizations, and programs, specifically doing youth mentoring, business leadership, and then he's on the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. There was one more board you wanted me to mention.
I don't remember, but
okay.
Sure.
A lot of different organizations. And so I'll hand it over to Matthew, but I just want to give him a warm welcome. His wonderful supportive parents are in the back.
Yes, yes. So thank you guys for letting me have the opportunity to talk to you guys. I get the joy and challenge of talking about inclusion and diversity. So before we get started, I figured I'd share a little bit about myself. As Nicole said, I'm from Virginia. I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University in the fall of 2013, where I double majored in interdisciplinary studies, meaning I sort of made my own degree. That degree had components of sociology, psychology, public policy, and special education. And then my second major was in sociology because I had all those credits already from doing all the other classes. And then I minored in psychology. Some of my hobbies include working with youth and people with disabilities. I'm a huge sports fan, Cubs fan, love all the Chicago people in the back. Cubs fan, VC Rams fan, all that kind of stuff. And then I started my own disability consulting company in December of 2014, quite honestly because I couldn't find work. So I thought it was really interesting that we were talking about employment today. And one of the things that never comes up as an option is talking about self-employment and entrepreneurship for people with disabilities as an employment option. I love this photo because of the sign that's in the photo. It really highlights that diversity in general, in all forms, is a warm and welcome thing, and that we need to embrace and welcome all forms of diversity to our world. And you can stop and ask questions anytime. This is very informal. Please just shout them out, and I'll be happy to answer them. But first, I want to challenge you guys for a second. What do you see in this picture? What do you guys think this picture represents? You can shout them out. You guys are teachers. I know you're not that quiet.
Dreams held down by other people's weight.
Okay. I heard dreams. I heard. Did I hear awareness?
Diversity, colors.
Okay.
No, it's go full takeoff, man. They're ready to launch.
I thought these were eggs.
Are they eggs?
Easter eggs.
I'd like to talk about
I
my
thought
visual
Easter
display.
egg hunting is what I think.
No, so that's exactly right. So this is an inclusive Easter egg hunt. So rather than having the students just grab the egg, they grab the balloon so that people in wheelchairs and who have other mobility impairments can participate in an Easter egg hunt. So you get the prize for the day, although there's no prizes. So I'm sorry.
You got a horse.
Yeah, you got a horse. There you go. So very cool. So the way that I'm going to kind of frame today's conversation is that specifically for people with disabilities, we have to do things differently. And we've sort of touched on this a little bit as we've gone through the morning. But every day, people with disabilities have to be some of the most creative and forward-thinking individuals that are on our planet, right? Because that's how they have to live on a regular basis. So why are we not, as a society, kind of bringing those people in to help in our world, help in our schools, help in all sorts of, in our work world and all of those places, because they will help come up with the most creative and amazing solutions that you will never have thought of. You know, I always kind of use the notion of, like, we all have to put our pants on one leg at a time, but we might just have to do it a little bit differently than the normal way. And what is normal, really, at this point in our lovely society that we have? So people with disabilities just have to be those creative minds and just figure out, really, hour by hour and minute by minute, how they're going to sort of get through the barriers that the world provides. And so we should be utilizing the way that they think in all of, whether it's in school or other environments throughout the world. So there's this whole kind of idea of equality and equity. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the normal picture of this is the three people on the box. But I thought this was super cool that they had the rent version. So the person with the disability could also be part of seeing the baseball game. But I think the biggest thing that we need to make sure that we're accomplishing, like, we want everything to be equal, but even if everything is equal, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone can have access to whatever the situation may be. So equality is great, but what we really need to be thinking about is equity, so that everyone can participate in schools, in activities here at No Barriers, thinking about all forms of, like, accommodations that are available so that everyone can get the great things out of life that exist. So that's kind of the whole notion of equality versus equity. Any questions so far? You guys are quiet. This is weird. I'm doing good. Zoom. So there was a couple of themes that I was asked to sort of think about: inclusion and optimism. So that kind of goes back to the whole theme of today, and so I thought it would be a really cool thing to look at word clouds and sort of think about words that, you know, represent inclusion, diversity, mission, because these are all things that you all as teachers are trying to instill in your students. You know, that difference, you know, we all have differences, but we can all be sort of in the same room and be doing the same things together, because in my opinion, if inclusion occurs, not only are students with disabilities getting a lot out of it, but also the students without disabilities, and quite honestly also I would say their parents too, because they could come back from school one day and be like, you know, we had this really cool activity where, you know, our special education students came in, or we were all in the same classroom, and I learned something about Johnny that I didn't know, or I learned something about Johnny's disability that I didn't know, and I now have a better respect for not only Johnny, and there we go with Johnny again, he's always getting in trouble. But not only Johnny, but also just disability in general. One of my biggest things that I'm always trying to push for is just exposure. And I think exposure is so important, because if a student sees another student with a disability in their school, they're exposed to it, they are can know how to interact with it, know what the right things to do is, the wrong things to do is. But then the even better thing is then when they go out into their communities and they're not in their schools anymore, and they see those same types of differences, they have an experience to draw on. One of the things that I always try to do, I always have a story that I always share, and it sort of ties back to this whole idea. I'll be in the grocery store, kind of rolling around, getting my groceries, running errands with my mom, and so often little kids will want to come up to me and ask me questions of, like, a lot of times I'll get, you know, why don't your legs work, or you know, why are you in this weird contraption that, you know, rolls and looks really cool. And I always view that as an opportunity to expose that child to disability and to difference. But in a lot of cases, I would say 7 times out of 10, the parent will come up and snatch the child up before I'm allowed to have that interaction with that young person. And usually when I'm having that interaction, I always try to put it in terms that the young person will understand. So I'll say, you know, it's like I'm playing a video game because I have my joystick on my chair. Or it's like I'm a transformer because my chair does all this really cool stuff. I always try and put it in a frame that they'll understand, but also, again, when they then see grandma or grandpa or somebody else down the road with a disability, they have an experience to say, oh yeah, I met that young man in the grocery store. He's really not, you know, he's just like me. He just does things differently. And so I think one of the things I would love to see occur is to not have those situations where the children are snatched up before that interaction is allowed to occur. Because I think those interactions are so, so important. Run through that really quick. So the next thing I was kind of asked to talk about was my experience with No Barriers. As Nicole said, I've been involved with No Barriers for the last 3 years. And I figure I'll preface a little bit about this with a bit of a story. So before I came to No Barriers, I was the type of person who hated to get out of my wheelchair for a number of reasons. There were certain occasions, I don't transfer on my own. I'm always in need of assistance from someone else to help me transfer. There have been a couple of occasions where I've been dropped. There have been a couple of occasions where I get hurt in another way, or the person who is helping me transfer hurts their back or something, because I'm a big guy, I like to eat, so I'm trying to do better, but it's not working. So I'm not the lightest feather, I will say. So I was missing out on a ton of opportunities because I just was too afraid to get out of my chair. I also had severe back pain and just didn't want to really move. My mom tried for years and years and years to get me out of my chair. But then one of my friends who's here with me, I come to No Barriers every year with 3 or 4 friends. We come every year. We all do different activities. Her goal was to get me to come to No Barriers for the first time. And see, I was really smart because I said, the only way I'm going to come to No Barriers is if you go with me. So I played a little trick on her. But the thing I would say is coming to No Barriers is something that changed my life for so much better, because it got me, my comfort zone, and my mom used to call my wheelchair kind of my bubble. So I was able to really burst out of my bubble and do a lot of really cool stuff. So that leads me to here. So this was the first year that I participated in the No Barriers Summit. The first picture on the left there is of me hand cycling. I can neither confirm nor deny that I may have run into a few cars while I was on the hand cycle, but I will not, like I said, not confirm nor deny that. But that was my first time really using a hand cycle, and I've actually ordered one for myself, and it should be coming in here very soon, so I can be continue to get exercise and try to stay healthy and do great things like that. The second picture there is in me swimming. And that was, when that picture was taken 2 years ago, that was probably, I hadn't been in a pool in probably 12 years. And they always talk about how being in a pool for a person with a disability is so good for them, because you're not having to worry about gravity, you're not having to worry about, your muscles aren't aching, different things like that. And so, for me, in both of these scenarios, I had to, again, trust somebody to help me get into the pool, get into the hand cycle, not be afraid that that they were going to drop me or somebody was going to get hurt. And it allowed me to experience these things. And I liked it. So in addition to that, in the first year, I did the coolest thing ever. I don't know if you guys have seen these chairs in Innovation Village. This is the most amazing chair that I've ever sat in my life. So, and I don't know if everyone can see it, but instead of regular wheels on the chair, it's like tank treads. So I call it the tank chair because it's just amazing. And so you can take the chair off-road, up hills, over boulders, all kinds of stuff. So it's a really great sort of outdoor chair, and I'm trying to convince my parents to buy me one, but I haven't had much success up to this point. Can I get a chair?
Sure.
Dang. So I'm excited because I'm actually going to be taking that chair tomorrow. I'm going to be going on the hike. I always try and do something that is really, every year I always try and do something big where I can really sort of push myself out of my comfort zone. The first year I rock climbed on the rock wall that you guys have seen out here. I got all the way to the top. It took me probably 45 minutes, but by golly, I got to the top and I rang the bell, and it was awesome. The second year, I'll get to that in just a second because I forgot I had pictures of that. But so I loved the No Barriers experience so much that I was like, this has to be something that has to go on my calendar every year. I want to continue to grow as a person. I want to continue to spread the message of No Barriers, help people understand that like getting out of your comfort zone and trying new things can lead you in so many different directions and can help you experience all that life has to offer. So that's why I give talks like this and really try to promote No Barriers to the best of my ability. The other picture that you see there is me doing some pull-ups on the TRX machine, like the ropes. So we were doing adaptive TRX. And I was actually talking to Rustin, who's the gentleman in the chair there yesterday during a break or something, and he was like, when you did that the first year, I hate to use this word, but he said, you inspired me. And I tried to then turn it around and say, I really appreciate that, but the way I kind of look at the whole inspiration angle is I'm just an average guy who just, again, has to do things a little bit differently. I genuinely appreciate when people come up to me and say, like you're an inspiration, but I kind of feel like to a certain extent they're missing the message a little bit, right? Because my goal is to not inspire people and make them, I understand why they say that, but that's not my purpose or that's not my goal. But Rustin and I had this conversation, and he was just talking about how, at that time 2 years ago, he was in a really dark place and was just struggling with some certain things, and he just remembers me, really kicking butt in the Adaptive TRX class, and he always is like super motivated by all the things that I'm doing. He follows me on social media and just keeps up with me and all that stuff, and he was very much proud to know me and proud that I was able to participate in his TRX class. So again, I liked it so much that I went back last year and did some more barrier breaking, so to speak. And I did archery, and so I know that picture is very hard to see, but I don't have a lot of, this is about as far as my right arm can go. And so we had to figure out a way for me to be able to shoot the arrow. So rather than shooting it like a normal person would shoot a bow and arrow, I shot it with my teeth. So they put the arrow in my teeth, I drew back with my head, and I was able to shoot the arrow that way. The other really cool thing that happened that day was I got to shoot a crossbow, which was the coolest thing ever. My mom was a little nervous because I don't have the best of aim, but that's neither here nor there. But so again, just thinking about how to be inclusive, think about multiple ways to have everyone get involved in every aspect of whether it's No Barriers, in your schools. Think outside of the box, be creative. Everyone has different learning styles in the way that they learn. And I know you guys know this as teachers, just trying to sort of reiterate it again, because there's always more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. And so if we can think about multiple ways to include all of our students, whatever their strengths and their weaknesses are, that's ideal. But the other really important thing too is make sure that you're getting student input as well to say, what are your strengths? What do you think your strengths are? What do you think your weaknesses are? What do you like to do? What don't you like to do? Have them be part of the decision-making process. Because if you empower them in that way, they're going to be more engaged in your classrooms. They're going to want to be involved, be active, and be engaged students, which is what we all want. In addition to doing archery, I was able to scuba dive. That was my big thing that I did the second year around. I put on the tank, I put on all the equipment, I had little booties on, it was kind of cool. And I scuba dove. We did it in a pool, but like I said, I'm always trying to think of new ways to continue breaking down those barriers that I've maybe have had to deal with in the past. The last thing there, I took a wheelchair self-defense class. So if anybody tries to come up and attack me afterwards, I don't recommend that because I might be able to take you down. But so just, again, doing things that I wouldn't normally do in my everyday life to experience new things, because those experiences can teach us so much about ourselves, about everyone else, and it's a fun thing to be a part of. So this year at No Barriers, like I said, my big thing this year is doing the hike. So I'm getting in the tank chair, and I remember at the closing ceremonies last year, I saw a video, and it was of another young man named Cole, and he was doing the hike, and I looked at that video and I was like, by next year I'm going to be doing a hike, just to really push myself out of that comfort zone and just get to the top of a mountain and be like, holy moly, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I'm doing that. I'm doing adaptive CrossFit tomorrow, which will be interesting. We'll see how that goes. And then I'm doing, with Rustin, the gentleman I talked about a little while ago, he also does adaptive boxing. So on Sunday, I'm going to be doing adaptive boxing. I'm doing a lot of physical things this year. I don't know why. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I did. And so, like, the No Barriers experience for me, like I said, has really been life-changing. It really has pushed me out of that comfort zone of my wheelchair, and has really kind of helped me relax and helped me trust in people to transfer and to do all of these other type things. So, my hope is that you sort of take some of these thoughts and messages that I hope to be sharing back to your students, and try and figure out, what are they passionate about, what are they good at, what are they, where do they struggle in some areas, and sort of utilize kind of this whole No Barriers mindset kind of in your classroom, so that your students can be the most, this is the final thought part, I should have flipped earlier, but can be the most successful versions of themselves that they want to be. And you all as teachers are in a tremendous position to be able to help develop that, cultivate that, and make sure they are so successful. Don't limit, and we were talking about this a little earlier and I couldn't agree more, but don't limit expectations of your students. I would say that young people in particular rise to the expectations that they have set for themselves by their teachers or their parents. So if we're setting low expectations for our students, they're gonna reach those. But if we set really, really high expectations and at times are sort of super, I don't want to say tough on them, but push them to be really, really successful, I can bet that 9 times out of 10 those students are going to reach those expectations. They're going to blow you away in the process, and you're going to feel great about yourself, but then also your student is going to be like, I can't believe I just, in their mind, I can't believe I just climbed that rock wall, or I can't believe I got an A on that test that I was nervous about, or whatever the case may be. So just have high expectations, think that all your students can be successful and can be strong people when they leave your schools, and I guarantee you they'll sort of blow you away. So I will open it up to any questions. I also have contact info if anyone would like to ask me questions as they're going through their projects. I would love to help in any way that I can. I also am all over social media, so please like and share and friend and do whatever all the social media things do on my social media pages.
We can include your contact information to make available with all the other resources.
Sure, no, that's great. Those were just some sources of some pictures, and just thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys. Enjoy the rest of this week too. Try and get out and see some of the activities if you're not working too hard, because this experience is life-changing for so many people. And you're in an environment that's so supportive. There's about 900 people here, maybe more, who just want to see everyone be successful and break out of their comfort zones and overcome their barriers. So when you're not working hard on your projects and different things like that, try to check some of that stuff out because it's truly pretty awesome. So does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
What is the scope or range of your consulting practice? And tell me about a job that you've done.
Yeah, so like I said, I couldn't find work out of school. Originally I thought I wanted to be a sports writer. And I got super involved in advocacy work, started doing my youth work, and really pivoted to disability, inclusion, diversity, kind of all of that work. And so my whole goal with Six Wheels Consulting is to get people to think about disability differently. The ADA has been around for 27 years, and there are still so many challenges that law brings about, even though that it's been around for that long. And that's sort of the bare minimum of what's required to be accessible. And as somebody who's 26 and has seen tons of examples where something is quote unquote ADA compliant, but still not user friendly to my needs and doesn't allow me to have full access to whether it's a hotel room or a restaurant that says they're ADA compliant, but there's chairs everywhere and it's really hard to navigate and all of those types of things. So I try to work with businesses and schools and nonprofits to go beyond just being ADA compliant and do more than what's required by law to be more inclusive. Because at the end of the day, if we set up our communities to be inclusive, if we set up our schools to be more inclusive, we're going to end up helping everyone, right? Because at some point, there's a couple things I always say, and it's already been touched on a little bit. Disability is the only minority group that we can all join in the blink of an eye. We can wake up one day and unfortunately there's some incident that now requires us to have a disability of some sort. And then unfortunately, even though we all don't want to admit it, we're all going to get old at some point. So we're all going to need different accommodations and different things like that now. So why not set up that world now while we still can and while we're still all healthy and capable of being advocates and being supporters of an inclusive environment. So how do I do that? I do consulting projects so I can help develop resources. I can do public speaking. I do assessments of spaces, not necessarily from an ADA perspective, but from a kind of a common sense perspective. So I can go into a space and say that table's too low and it wouldn't work for a wheelchair user, and here's why, so maybe raise the table up, or simple things like that. And my whole goal is kind of this whole idea of inclusion above compliance. And so I'm just trying to do that. I know that was a very long-winded answer, I apologize, but yeah. Yes, sir?
So, multiple times in the last couple of days, the word I have felt inspired, and it's not a word I want to use a different word.
Sure.
Well, what do you recommend? Because I think we don't even, we're trying to change the language from special educators to diverse learner.
Sure.
Diverse learners, and so we're diverse learner teachers now.
Sure, sure.
What do you recommend as far as the language? I think that stuff adds up.
The way I always look at it is I'm not here to inspire people, but I am here to motivate people. It's like if I can get out of my chair and I can climb the rock wall, or I can get out of my chair and scuba dive, what can you do as an educator, or what can someone else do? What is their chair that's holding them back from being the most successful and most awesome version of themselves that they can be? And I'm getting ready to go on tour to a bunch of colleges and universities and kind of try and give the same sort of message to college students, particularly freshmen, as they're getting ready to go into the college world, and say, you guys are in a unique position to be you have all these new things at your disposal. No one really knows who you are unless you have a couple of friends that went to the same school as you. Get out of your comfort zone and try things that you wouldn't normally try. Go talk to that person that you've always wanted to go talk to, or but been too shy to talk to, or go try out for that club or sports team. And quite honestly, that's really what No Barriers is all about, is getting out of that comfort zone and just doing things that either you call it on your bucket list or that you just would never do in your everyday life. because you're in an environment that's welcoming, warm, supportive. So do it here and get the most out of it and get to that top of that mountain where you can see that view and you can be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just sort of pulled that up. I know I pivoted away from your question, but so yeah, I would sort of call myself more of a motivator more than inspirational. Like I said, I understand why people say that, but my goal is not to inspire people. My goal is to just kind of get them out of their chairs and whatever their chair may be or whatever their challenge may be, and work through it and become a better person on the other end of it. So, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I work in the inner city,
Cool.
and many of the kids that are in wheelchairs,
Mhm.
they are limited by what Medicaid will cover. They don't have middle class or upper class families who can afford an
Sure.
electric wheelchair.
Sure.
So they're limited to the kind that you have to move yourself.
Sure.
But their upper body strength isn't very strong. So basically they're stuck with going home and going to school. The rest of their world is very small
Right.
because of that. Are there any advocacy groups that you know of that are looking at how to change that with Medicaid? Because very difficult for these kids.
It's a very tricky thing. Basically, the way the disability world is set up is it promotes being in poverty, which is unfortunate. Because in order for me to receive SSI benefits or anything like that, which is, for me, I get $730 a month, which, yes, that's not a ton of money, but every cent helps pay for equipment that I need or medical services. Let me ask you guys a question. How much do you think my wheelchair is that I'm sitting in? Oh God, you guys are $32,000 wheelchair. So I wish it was $3,000. That'd be great. But I need this chair, right? This chair is my legs. This chair allows me to get out in the world and experience the world. I understand there are tons of scenarios where families just don't have the resources in order to sort of afford a chair like mine. But the way the world is sort of set up is it like promotes poverty. There are tons of programs nowadays. There are these new accounts called ABLE accounts, and it allows people with disabilities and their families to save up to a certain amount of money without counting against their benefits. Each state has a different number. I know in Virginia that number is $14,000 a year. Yes, it's still not a ton, but like I said, every penny helps to allow you to be more successful. Unfortunately, like, the system is broken, and it's a hard system to navigate. As far as like advocacy groups, I would just recommend that specifically for young people, get involved in advocacy early. There's the National Independent Living organization, and there's state organizations at each state. So do your research and kind of figure out what those organizations are, and kind of try to guide your students in those directions so that they can gain a voice. I've always been very talkative. My parents will tell you I don't shut up, but I didn't have until I got involved in my youth work. I wasn't thoroughly involved in advocacy, and I wasn't, sitting on all of these boards and gaining a voice. But once I started doing those types of things, like my self-empowerment sort of went through the roof, my confidence went through the roof, because I was able to explain what my strengths were, explain what my weaknesses were, and explain, like, here's what I need as an individual with a disability. Now, we need to change the way the system works, because, there are, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities in this world, and we gotta do better. I still think there's a ton of work that needs to be done within the disability world. I think we're getting better. I think we're getting there, but it's sad when you have a political person who's running for office go up on stage and make fun of a person with a disability on national television. Like, that should never. whatever your political stance is, like I'm not saying that to make a political statement. I'm saying that to say it should never happen. That should never happen to where somebody can make fun of people with disabilities on a national stage like that. And those are the challenges that we still face 27 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Do you feel like sometimes people see, they box you in and just see your disability, they don't see you as
Happens all the time. Happens all the time. Luckily for me, I'm very friendly and outgoing. Not everyone with it, like some people with disabilities are shy. So there's no one size fits all scenario, right? But I do think that society as a whole views people with disabilities as being incapable of doing a lot. You know, I've started my own business. I've interned with the Obama administration in DC. I've interned in other places, and I'm doing things. But society as a whole just sees people with disabilities as, you know, people who are incapable of doing things. And that mindset also needs to change to say, you know, if we give people with disabilities an opportunity, 9 times out of 10, they're going to blow you away, and they're probably going to do it better than, and more creatively than some of your non-disabled people who you might work with or who might be in your community. So there's a lot of work to still do, and that's why I love that you guys are doing the Impact program and doing all of these things, because we need more. One of the biggest things that's going to help it change is when people who have no connection to disability whatsoever start advocating for the rights of people with disabilities and saying, you know, if a curb cut doesn't look right or something doesn't look right, going up and saying, you know, that's not right and that's not cool to limit someone's access or whatever the case may be because they have a disability. You know, I can sit here and do it until I'm blue in the face, but we need tons of more support to say,